Welcome to Transforming with Drew, where we talk about all things transgender from F to M to M to Fs and how to change your life for the better. Okay, so I'm very pleased to introduce our first M to F comedian to the Transforming with Drew podcast, where we talk about all things trans with the lovely, amazing, and funny, yes, funny, Erin Mohr. Hello, Erin. How are you this afternoon?
Good. Happy to be here. Thank
Okay,
you.
would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit more about you, where you come from, and why are you a comedian?
I grew up in Ohio and went to school out there. And then after graduating college, I moved to Seattle and bounced around a lot. Got a lot of temp jobs all over the place. Eventually landed at a company called Big Fish Games around the 2000s, and then worked there for about 11 years. And then once that company got purchased, I was able to kind of leave that behind. I quit working at Big Fish and did a lot of soul searching in that moment. And first things I had to address was depression, deep, heavy depression that happened. I had right around the same time my mother had passed. And then I kind of quit the job, which normally would be, sounds like, oh, wonderful, you're not working. But having all that time to myself without any kind of rudder, kind of put me into a deep funk. And so, yeah, the first work was to get a handle on that depression and anxiety. And then once I got kind of my feet under me, the question I had from my therapist was like, well, there's this other thing I want to explore, and that being my gender identity. Something I always knew I was going to have to address it. This is something I always could remember as young. One of my first dreams was around gender. And it was just feelings that never left me my whole life. So yeah, it came out. And God, it sounds so simple, right?
No, because you gotta understand, like, what I don't know if any of the listeners are aware of this, but 100% of transgender people experience depression and anxiety. That is not a made up statistics. Unfortunately, we struggle, and you had to overcome that just as much as I did. And I think I can actually relate to you in a similar situation where, like, we had something serious happen to us that kind of put us in perspective at an older age. Like, hey, we kind of need to start working on ourselves. So it's not simple. And I promise, it's beautiful. Keep going.
Thank you. Yeah, it is kind of like that rock bottom, something that will take you down to your depths. And I know the way I put it is I didn't have the suicidal thought. I had the thought before that. It was, what occurred to me was, what happens if I don't get any better? What happens if I can't, what happens if I can't resolve this depression? And then before I stopped my mind, before I went there, but I knew where my mind was going, and I'm like, okay, no, this is bad. I gotta fix this. And for me, that was therapy. I mean, I was in therapy, and then antidepressant medication really helped. And so, yeah, I slowly dealt with my gender identity came out very slowly. I was married at the time to a woman, and my fear was that I was going to lose her if I went too fast.
Mhm.
That was both a benefit to myself and maybe a hindrance too. You know, I was ready, but I mean, it was nice to kind of take it slowly. Um, but in the end, it didn't matter. I lost the marriage anyway, unfortunately. But I gained a friend. I'm still very close to her to this day, and we talk weekly. But that leads me to comedy, and I I hate admitting this, but I watched the Mrs. Maisel show, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and the show does such a wonderful job of showing what goes on, you know, how a comedian becomes a comedian, and what the steps they have to do with writing and getting booked and whatnot. And it reminded me there was a bit where one of the characters stood up and did a monologue from Bob Newhart. And as soon as he started, and it wasn't revealed till later that it was a Bob Newhart thing, but as soon as he started, I was like, hey, that's the Bob Newhart bit. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was kind of a comedy nerd, wasn't I, at one point in my life? And I was. When I was a kid, I loved stand-up comedy. I loved SNL. I um, I thought I wanted to be a comedian. I read books about it. Somewhere along the way, I lost it, and it took um, a cute Amazon Prime series to remind me that that's what I loved, and that's what I wanted to do. And so I took a class on it and found out that I was pretty good at it. I had a knack for it. And so kind of here I am. I was living up in Seattle during this whole time. And then once that happened, I picked up and moved down to LA at the beginning of 2019. And I've been pursuing comedy ever since.
And by the way, you're more than pretty funny, so don't sell yourself short. You're very funny. Um, I know. So you have started recently. It was a pandemic and everything, so that's probably been a little bit rough. Have you found any challenges in being in comedy as a trans woman?
It has challenges. It has advantages. The advantage being is, you know, I have a unique point of view that I can draw from. And one of the other things that is an advantage is that the audience, and I perform in front of mostly hetero cis people in clubs and bars and whatnot. The audience is nervous. You can feel they're a little bit on edge when they see a trans person get up, and they're you know, afraid they're going to get. I don't know what they're afraid of. You know, they're just not comfortable being. They're just not comfortable with being around trans people. They don't know, quote unquote, know trans, even though, yeah, as I'm sure
We're
you just
still human beings. I tell everybody, I'm like, I'm still human. I mean, yeah, I'm transgender, but I'm still a human being. And
exactly.
exactly, there's nothing's going to change about that. The only difference is I know more perspectives than you probably realize, but that's about it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I can see that being that a little bit hard, but I do see like a lot of the stuff that your advantages. I remember the first TikTok I saw of yours was a talking about giving them a pamphlet, going on a date,
Mm.
and a diagram. I could not. I think I had to watch that video 4 times because it was just the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. Because you're very open and very proud, and it's like you're definitely an advocate for trans women and kind of showing visibility. What made you decide to do that?
I believe it stems from my from being in hiding. I think I just don't want to hide who I am anymore. I lived a few decades. I won't say how many decades.
Hey, here.
But I lived, most of my life, huge part of most of my life, as someone else. And I hated it. I really hated it. I hated living with a mask and pretending to be somebody I wasn't. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to feel that shame and anxiety anymore. I believe that that's what it is. I mean, the other obvious thing is, and we talked briefly about this before the show started, is that, without visibility, we're not going to make, as transgender people in general, we're not going to make progress on the things that we need to make progress, our safety and understanding and stopping, various legislations from happening without that visibility. And I know that not everybody can live the way I can. I have a certain, I have financial security that a lot of people don't have. And I live in a profession where I work in a profession where honesty and vulnerability is rewarded. So I'm not going to say it's easy. It's easier. It's easier.
I like to tell people it doesn't get easy in life. What happens is you get stronger. And that's what I think a lot of trans people get. We get stronger as we get older because we have to live our authentic life. So it becomes easier for us and in mindset, but at the same time, it's because we're finally living who we want to be. And I mean, that's what I think what drew me to want to interview someone like you, because your energy, you know what I'm talking about? When I see somebody's energy and like I just see how proud they are to be themselves, I'm like, that's the person I want on here. That's the person I want more visible. That's what people need to see. I actually wrote an article recently about, unfortunately, how many lives were taken last year. It's the highest record amount of lives of transgender people, and we might beat that record this year because of what's happening. And that's why I thought this is extremely important to talk on this podcast with beautiful and amazing and strong and compassionate trans people from all walks of lives. Because as much as like I don't know if you get this as much, but I get it. The LGBT world doesn't really 100% accept trans men as much either as cis people. Notice that, especially the L community. That's something. Right. So it's like now I have to create visibility in my community, and then somehow create visibility in the cis community. So I'm like grabbing avenues from every person that I can see that is strong and beautiful, because I feel like we're not in this alone. Trans people have to fight a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We have to. And we have to support each other when we can. And that's part of what I do. And I mean, I do this I do comedy for giggles. I love laughs. I love making people laugh. I won't kid you and say this is some altruistic thing. But the icing on the cake is that I'm getting to create visibility at the same time. There's a lot of times when I don't want to do comedy. I don't want to perform. I'm just not feeling it, and it's those moments when I draw on that feeling that, oh, I can make a